My name is Ivan Duran. I'm the proud superintendent of the Bellevue School District. Thank you for joining our first superintendent community conversation. The purpose for these conversations is to help bring our learning community closer together by hearing directly from our students, educators, staff, and families. We are at a point where we need to begin to reclaim this community we call school. Today, we will be talking about our gradual transition to offering more in-person learning services for students, as well as hearing from some of our students around their experience in the COVID-19 pandemic up to this point. I'm joined by Newport Seniors Benji Blatt, their ASB president, and Mickey Kusunose, editor of Nightlife, their student paper. It's great to be here with both of you. So again, thank you so much for joining me in my first community conversation. I want to start by asking you all some questions. Let me first just ask you, how have you been holding up in this nearly year-long pandemic?
Hi, thank you for having us, first of all. I've been holding up well. It's been a bit of a struggle, if I'm being honest, not seeing all of my school friends. Yeah, I'm glad I've gotten to still do my schoolwork, and it's okay. It's generally okay.
First off, yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've been holding up pretty well. Obviously, remote learning comes with its own challenges, but with the flexibility that I have in terms of my own time, it's been a positive for my time management. So there are good things that came out of it as well.
So what do you miss the most from school before COVID-19?
For me, I miss a lot of these small conversations that I'll have in the hallways, during the passing periods, during lunch, for example. Those small interactions I have with my peers is something I definitely miss. And also playing in the orchestra, something that I really miss as well.
So the thing I miss most from school is probably the people who I only see in school. So they're not my closest friends, but they're definitely people I consider to be real friends. And I just haven't really gotten a chance to catch up with a lot of them. I miss seeing my coaches. I run cross country and track, so I miss seeing my coaches on a day-to-day basis.
So from a student perspective, what advice can you give me regarding bringing more students and educators back for in-person learning?
The main thing that I would want you to focus on is probably just keeping the students and staff safe, but also thinking about the community, because we're going home and we're interacting with our family and our parents and that sort of thing. So definitely focus on safety, focus on making a seamless transition from online to school.
I think my biggest point of advice for you, Dr. Duran, is that safety and quality education they're not mutually exclusive, and that a solution is going to have to incorporate both, and that they come hand in hand. So from a student standpoint, that's something that I would like to see as we transition forward.
So if we are able to go back to in-person learning, you mentioned a little bit around some of the things around safety, but what are some of your other primary concerns that you have right now?
My primary concern also kind of has to do with that transition from online to in-person learning, because a lot of, especially Newport kids, are focused on AP tests and are like difficult classes. It would be nice to know like a seamless transition from online to in-person, and that just means having a lot of details and not having a lot of gray area so that everything is mapped out and we know exactly what we're doing.
I'll jump right off Benji's comment there. I definitely agree with them. And again, because high schoolers, we have 7 classes, typically with 7 different teachers. I think my biggest concern is making sure there's clarity and information on what the logistics will look like, because there's going to be a lot of moving around, a lot of moving pieces, and it would be good to have a clear information on there.
Well, congratulations on your senior year. I'm sure this is not what you expected or how you wanted this year to be, but is there anything unexpected about this year that has been a positive for you? And then what are your plans after graduation?
One silver lining from this year for me has been I've gotten more organized, especially with schoolwork. During normal school, I have all my textbooks, all my notebooks, and my computer. So now just having all my information and to-dos on the computer has really helped me procrastinate less. So that's definitely been a positive. As for my plans after graduation, I'm going to college. I don't know what college yet, but definitely moving out. So that's exciting.
The one positive thing for me from this pandemic is just having more time on my hands, especially in the afternoons. So I've had more time to practice my violin, or more time to focus on some of my extracurriculars that I can do. So that's been really great for me, and I've really appreciated that. As for my future plans, I'm in the same boat with Benji. I'm planning on going to college. While I don't know exactly where, I'm really excited to see what the future has for me.
So now we're going to take this chance to ask you, Dr. Duran, a few questions. So the first question, how do you go about making the decision to return students to in-person classes? And more specifically, what does the safety look like in the school building? And additional question on that, how does the district weigh risks and take responsibility for impacts like student getting sick?
Yo, Benji, that's a great question. And it's a really, there's a really large answer. I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible. But I think first and foremost, as we're making decisions, we're learning from other districts from around the country, from around the world, and even here locally that have already reopened. So we've been studying and learning, some of the best practices that they put in place to safely have students return to buildings. We closely monitor our local data. King County Health, has some numerous dashboards that we look at that we follow from, positivity rates to the different type of cases that are going on right now, hospitality rates. We're constantly looking at different data points in order to make our decisions. And then we have spent a lot of time investment, really coming up with a really strong set of protocols and risk mitigation strategies that we have in place so that we can ensure that from the time a student comes into our building to the time that they leave, that there's numerous things that are in place. That's true for our students, our staff, and our educators. And so as an example, elementary school that I was visiting a couple of weeks ago, students come in, they lined up 6 feet apart, they walk in, they get a temperature check, staff member checks their mask and make sure that it's, fits them well, and it's at least double witness on it so that we can ensure that it's the right type of mask. If a student doesn't have the right mask, we have numerous ones for them to be able to replace them. And then we've put in different types of signs. We have hand sanitation. We've even increased and changed the air ventilation that's coming into our buildings to make sure that we have more fresh air coming in. So there are numerous safety things that we have put in place. And as we think about making these difficult decisions, I really believe that throughout this time, it's all about how we manage the risk. And we have been serving students since March. From childcare, from our early learners, providing nutrition services, and even providing transportation. And since September, we have been bringing more students in for additional services, and we're serving about 900 students right now for in-person services. And so, it's given us confidence that we can, mitigate the risk and ensure we have all the right things in place so that we feel more confident to bring our students in.
Recently, the district announced that kindergarteners, first graders, and second graders will be going back to in-person learning. There are many concerns about increasing cases in our community, the delayed vaccine timeline, and new COVID variants. So what concrete actions will you take to address these concerns, and how does this fit in with recent negotiations with the BEA?
Yeah, Mickey, that's a great question. And I think, first and foremost, we know that the concerns that people have are very real and very valid. People experience this pandemic, many different ways. We know there's some fear in the community, but again, I just have to go back to, that we have spent quite a lot of time, developing really clear safety measures and protocols that basically shows that if you wear a mask, you follow the physical distancing, if you're washing your hands or using hand sanitation, you're doing the ventilation, if you're following all these risk mitigation strategies, we have shown that we can do it, and so that's what is kind of helping me to make these decisions around expanding more in-person services. The vaccine timeline has definitely been, one where we're finally starting to see some really good movement in that space. I really feel it's going to be, important for, all of us to get vaccinated during this time, but we still see it, as, further, down the road to be able to be the main solution for us. But very recently, our new CDC director at the national level has basically made a very clear statement that vaccines are not required in order for students to return to school. And so we, again, just need to follow all the safety and risk mitigations that we have in place. And again, we're tracking the data. We meet regularly with King County Health, and so we're having experts who are giving us information around what's happening with the different variants and what's happening with the different cases. Fortunately, in the majority of our community here in Bellevue, we're seeing the cases go down, and so that's a positive thing for us. But we know that throughout our entire community, we can't ease up. We have to continue to wear masks. We have to continue to be following the physical distancing. We have to make sure that we're staying within, pods and not gathering in large groups. So if people keep doing that, I really feel that it's going to give us the ability to open more schools. And then how this fits in with our recent negotiations with the Bellevue Education Association is that, we have put, safety at the forefront of this agreement. We have created what we're calling building safety teams in each of our buildings, which is made up of school administrators, educators, other staff members. And so they basically now are empowered to really look at a whole series of different data metrics and really make decisions based off what they've seen with in-person learning up to this point. And if we are meeting all those safety protocols are in place and we're looking at the numbers and the numbers are showing that we can have more in-person learning, then they are making the decision to bring the next group of students in. So we have really empowered our schools to utilize this information to make some of these decisions, which is something that, I think many of our educators were expressing that they just wanted to have a little bit more control in the situation. So we definitely have done that. And I think we're going to start to see, more students return because we're seeing the numbers starting to drop. And again, we're seeing our risk mitigation strategies work.
So regarding a possible timeline for middle school and high school return, when do you think middle schoolers and high schoolers will be able to go back to in-person learning?
Benji, thank you for that question. That's a question that we're hearing from many of our community members now, from many of our students. I think everyone has seen, the case numbers go down. They're seeing the new decision tree, which basically shows that we have the ability to provide more in-person services, to our students. So I would say that, we don't have a specific timeline that we've outlined yet. We're working closely with our Education Association to make some of these decisions. But, I just want to remind everybody that we have been providing in-person services for our middle school and high school students. We have some other memos of understanding that we've created with the association that allows us to expand that. And so we're going to continue to work with our school leaders and school staffs to think about what are some ways that we can further expand services to our students, which could include additional mental health supports. It could include some additional learning. It could even be just, I saw recently there's going to be a district-wide club that's going to be coming out. So I think there's going to be some really good opportunities for us to allow students to start to return following all these different protocols that we put in place. It may not be that uniform return, right away, but I am hopeful that we're going to be able to have some in-person learning for all of our secondary students before the end of this year. And then I just really think a lot about, both of you and our other seniors, that, have never had the opportunity to be in school, being, upper, class people in your school. And so I definitely want to figure out ways that we can have you in school experiencing that connection with other students. And I can tell you that from some of the students and families that we've heard up to this point, getting back into school, seeing other students, seeing their educators, in person, mask to mask, and in this situation now has really, really been important. And we've seen a light, and a spark kind of come back to many of our students and educators as we start to expand the in-person services.
So what is a realistic image for what a high school return would look like from a logistical standpoint? And also considering that we all have 7 different classes with 7 different teachers. So in essence, what does a school day look like for us?
Yeah, Mickey, you're really asking me some tough questions here, because that's one, again, that we've really been wrestling with, because, we still have many of these risk mitigation strategies we have to follow. Currently wearing a mask is required. Having the 6-foot distancing is being required. And so we know that at the secondary level, with just a large number of students, we probably won't be able to have a uniform return, as to what you were used to previously before COVID-19. And so we have some groups that are currently working, on some of this, on these plans. And there's, a matter of fact, a group that's going to be coming together next week to continue the conversation around what would it look like. Would we have to divide our students into two different groups, have an A group and a B group, with some students coming, on Monday and Thursday, and another group of students coming on Tuesday and Friday, and then both groups attend remotely on Wednesday. I think we have the opportunity for our educators to consider doing some broadcasting, so that when A group is in person, B group can be broadcasting, receiving, the signal coming in, when they're at home. And so I think there's going to be opportunity for us to think creatively and to think outside of the box and how we can do some more broad, uniform return for our secondary students. There are quite a few districts around us that are starting to do some of that right now. Bainbridge Island just announced some of their reopening plans. I know Mercer Island is considering some of this, but I think it's going to be really challenging for us, because at the secondary level, we just have more students and we just can't fit the same number of students into classrooms. So we're going to probably have to utilize every learning space available, from, the practice rooms to the gyms to the multi-purpose rooms, and even consider how we can utilize outdoor spaces, when the weather holds up, or when we have places where we have cover. So those are things that we definitely are considering, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to really be creative and I think outside the box, because we want to have more students return to in-person services. We just are hearing from many students and families that there's a need for that, and there's just a real desire to have some experience before the year ends.
So our last question for you today, how is the district planning on supporting student mental health through the transition from virtual to in-person learning?
Thank you, Benji. That is such a critical question right now. It's one of the things that for me, that is top of mind as I talk to some family members and I talk to students. There's definitely a lot of concern around the mental health and well-being of all of our students, and I think that's also true for our adults. So as much as we're focusing on what we need to do for our students, we also need to be thinking about how we're going to support our adults during this time. I read a really good article around some suggestions for returning in person, and they use the term, we have to make sure that we have learning environments and classrooms where we can have healing space, because people have had just so many different experiences during this time. And so we have to make sure we have the space and time for our students and our educators to have some of these conversations as we start to make this transition. But our mental health services team, our counseling team, our counselors, and our educators are just doing a really amazing work right now. We're doing some in-person services for mental health, and we're going to be transitioning so that right now we've had at one of our schools, but we want to transition that so that it's actually in each of our buildings, so that we can provide more support for our students from counselors, in the environments that they're most familiar with. On February 1st, as a matter of fact, we launched a wellness and resilience group for middle school students. And so they're going to be covering topics like managing strong emotions, building healthy relations, coping with stress. So it's a great opportunity for our students to learn new skills and strategies to deal with stress that they may be experiencing in the pandemic, and then just life in general. I'm happy to announce that on February 23rd, we're going to start something new that's called Agents of Change. And it's a group for high school students district-wide. And so the goal of this group is going to be increased connectedness, increased engagement in school, increased likelihood, for students can really understand, some of the signs of suicide that a friend may experience, so that they can, get the help and support they need for somebody who may be having that experience. We're going to be doing some work around just building positive perceptions of adult support, and then just really understanding that it's okay to ask for help, that at different times we all need it, and it comes in different forms. And so I think we really want to make sure that our students are equipped with, the really good support so they can get what they need. We're going to also just continue to do some community forums on mental health for our parents. In February, there's going to be around some topics around just supporting student resiliency. There's going to be some work on supporting students' organization and sometimes even just some of the challenging behavior that parents may be seeing from students, and then just how to even just experience and support students who may be having some frustrations and anger during this time. So, we have some work that's in place. We have, screening that we've been doing, signs of suicide. We're going to continue that screening for our 7th and 10th grade students, and then we will be circling back and having, more wellness and resiliency group for our high school students. So we have quite a few things that are in place right now that I think are going to be really beneficial for our students. But I just can't express how much it's a concern that I have, many members of our community have. I read another really good article that talked about that. We've talked a lot about academic learning loss during this time, but there's also this loss around just pure connection and just what you would call school. We're human beings and we're social beings, and we're used to being around people, and we haven't been able to be around people in the same way. So we're going to have to really make sure that we're transitioning all of us back to more in-person services, because it's been different experiences for different people. Really want to take a moment now just to give a real big shout out to Benji and Mickey for taking the time to be part of our first superintendent community conversation. I want to thank everybody that had the opportunity to be able to watch this video, and I hope you will be watching some of the future ones we're going to be putting out, where we're going to be talking to more students, educators, staff, and family members in our community.